Hey guys, Dahbadu here. So I was asked to create a reaction video for the 3.19 Manifesto. I think there are some important changes. Most of the changes that I kind of quickly reviewed didn't seem that impactful, but let's kind of go over it. Now, like where I'm coming from reading this, like there are better players out there. There are players that, do solo self-found. There are racers out there. I'm really kind of none of those. I think I'm okay at playing the game, and I'm getting better, and I'm learning the boss fights. But I think what I'm kind of good at in this game and what I enjoy is coming up with original builds that are a bit off meta, that don't use chase items, and can act as starters, and kind of punch above their weight. You know, they do damage. They're a bit tanky. And based off of how they perform, they're relatively inexpensive to build. And so kind of like theory crafting, that's my jam. I like the theory craft. So when I'm going through these patch notes, kind of that's going to be my focus, and also like how they relate to my current build that I have posted for 3.18, which is the Absolution Guardian, and how these patch notes will affect that, or this manifesto will affect that. And I also have two other builds as well, and I might discuss those going through this. This is a lot of reading. I appreciate GGG for coming up with these manifestos, these giant walls of text, but I have a giant ass drink here, which will help me keep hydrated while going through all this. So, all right, let's begin. So defense balance. I don't know if I want to read all of this. All right, let's just start with the first problem. Spell suppression is intended to mostly be accessible to characters on the right side of the passive skill tree. However, spell suppression values on item modifiers are high enough that any character can reasonably reach 100% spell suppression chance through items alone. Yeah, basically. So I would like them to kind of make the tree stronger. So if you put points in the tree, that will enable you to get more spell suppression. This actually goes in line with the next character that I'm working on this league. I'm level 98 right now. I haven't come out with the video, but it's basically a General's Cry Berserker build that uses the Arakali's Fang, not for the spiders, but basically to do damage. Because I'm trying to keep it cheap, like I don't have some fly kicks with a bunch of spell suppression on here. And where I'm getting my spell suppression is just a chunk from my body armor. Like 32% is a lot. I think that's T1, right? But that's the only place I'm getting spell suppression from my gear. Actually, I do have a Watcher's Eye that gives me some spell suppression with Grace. But beyond that, I'm really just getting it from the tree, right? So I'm buying these 2 points here, and I'm coming over here and getting this. This is actually really good mastery. Let's see. Inventorate. Am I pronouncing that properly? Let's see what the deal is here. Okay, there we go. All right. So it looks like this might save me some skill points here. So this might make this Poisoner, General's Cry, Berserker build that I have going on better, which is nice. I think this is a good change, not just because it affects my build that I have, that I'm working on, but yeah, this is, if you have 100% spell suppression, I think it makes sense to have some investment in the tree. All right, let's talk about the next one. Arctic Armor does not grant enough defensive power to compete with other defensive reservation skills, particularly since the majority of its protection is only granted when the player is standing still. All right, let me get a... All right, so yeah, basically standing still in this game usually equals death. You can build super tanky characters that can do that. And if you do, Arctic Armor seems to make sense there. My favorite thing about Arctic Armor, and this is kind of hard to quantify, is when a monster hits you, it freezes the monster. That's pretty cool. Also, it does leave chilled ground, and you might be able to leverage that for something as well. Let's say that there's an effect that you have, you do more damage to monsters on chilled ground, or whatever the case is. it can chill monsters, especially like, you know, if you're using a Cyclone or something like that to move around. But, you know, I do think it was slightly underpowered, but it still saw action, and it was used in some builds. I don't know if this buff is necessary. It looks like they basically like almost doubled the values, which is fine. I think we're going to see it in more builds, which is nice. And it might be even too strong depending, but you know, again, it's really only if you're standing still, and there's a lot of drawbacks for standing still. All right, so let's go to the next one. Flesh and Stone is not powerful enough to warrant the 25% mana reservation. Yeah, pretty much. I actually tried to fit it into my this current build when I was, you know, tinkering around with things, trying things out, try to squeeze as much power out of this build as I could. You know, and basically it just wasn't worth it. You know, I like the blind, but blind really doesn't do that much. It's like 5% right here. And that's versus like a Guardian Pinnacle boss. And, you know, I have a decent amount of evasion. Not a lot, but a decent amount. But yeah, I don't think blind's that effective. And let's see what they do to this thing. All right, so Flesh and Stone now causes you to take 11 to 15% less damage. So you take less damage. That's kind of nice. They're making adjustments to blind. Let's see. Okay. Blind. All right. The Silent Steps notable passive skill now grants 40% increased blind effect. All right. The small passives in that are increased as well. Blind Mastery, okay. You know, that does have some potential. Let me even just get a night. Oops. I guess I am recording, which is nice. All right, so let's go over here to the tree. What is the blind stuff? Is it up here? I know it's like in this area. Come on, where is it? There it is. And there's like a blind thing down here, but that's for crit. Okay, so let's just go here to blind. All right, let's see what the difference is. Interesting. I mean, that's a lot of skill points, right? So I'm guessing that might be like, I don't know, 85% when this is all said and done. That's what I'm thinking. You know, is it worth it? It depends, you know, what other adjustments they're making. This might see a bit more action because of it. I do think that they need to find ways to let let players leverage blind a bit more, kind of eke more power out of it. I do think that's a good change. All right, so where are we? Okay, Defiance Banner. All right. Provides a substantial percentage increase to armor and evasion on top of other benefits for a low investment. Pretty much, I actually haven't used Defiance Banner in any of my builds this league. I just didn't have the mana reservation to slap it on there. It's really good though. So let's see. They're nerfing the increased armor and evasion rating. This is, let's just say, about around by half. So that's the equivalent of like 2 to 3 small passives, an investment on the skill tree. And it looks like they buffed this slightly, reduced critical strike chance, but I don't really care about reduced critical strike chance because like when you're doing a map and it has an fixed, you know, monsters have 300 to 400% increased critical strike chance. Like this is just like a drop in the bucket. What I'd like them to do, they're already going to do this, right? But here's an idea to make Defiance Banner kind of stand out, have a place, and not, you know, increase your armor and evasion a bunch. Is just completely take this away, okay? and take this away. And then what you can maybe do is like, what I'd like to see at least, is crit damage mitigation. Okay, so you take 30% reduced extra damage from critical strikes. Like, that's kind of key in certain, doing certain maps with certain affixes, or like, doing the simulacrum. So like if you're, going post wave 25 in the simulacrum, it starts to get, progressively more difficult at that stage. And you got to start paying attention to affixes. And when you have like affixes that, monsters have 300% increased chance to crit or whatever, and then like a crit multiplier on that, and then they get like monsters have a chance to, or monsters when they hit you, they do brittle on you, like you're always going to get crit, right? And if you're doing that, you really need, crit damage mitigation, which I think is really important. I like to try to get it on my Watcher's Eye when I can. I wasn't able to find a Watcher's Eye for this build. For that, I really wanted to get bleed immunity, spell suppression, and crit damage reduction for my Watcher's Eye. I just couldn't find any of those on sale. This one I think cost me like 10x. You don't need a Watcher's Eye this expensive for this build. I basically paid, extra money for the poison immunity, which really doesn't matter that much. With just the bleeding and spell suppression, which is what I want. That's like, it was like 1.5x for this Watcher's Eye. But anyways, I'm kind of taking it off track here. That's what I'd like. I'd like to see maybe that change. Just more ways to let you reduce extra damage from crits, because there does seem to be a lot of things that really scale crit damage from monsters nowadays, and it can be pretty deadly, and it's just not fun, to get just like crazy one shot out of nowhere with like no telegraph, which I guess is a very PoE thing, but I love this game. I love it because it hurts me. All right, so let's go to the next one. Wind Dancer's Keystone's drawback of taking 20% more attack damage if you've been hit by an attack recently is too risky to make the Keystone feel like a worthwhile trade. Yeah, actually, I never used it. I'm clicking on the wrong thing again. I never used it. Let's see, Wind Dancer. That's right here too. Okay. Yeah, that's... I feel that this can use a buff. Let me get some more water here. All right, so the Wind Dancer Keystone passive no longer provides 40% more evasion if you've been hit by an attack recently. Instead, it now provides 10% more chance to evade attacks if you've been hit by an attack recently. Oh, that's cool. That's nice. I like that. Okay, cool. I do think like evasion is strong, but armor is even stronger, and it feels like they're making some adjustments to evasion to make it more competitive, I think. All right, let's keep on going down. All right, the next one. Ward is a relatively niche defense mechanic. That is true. I don't even need to read more than that. Let's see what they're doing to Ward to make it better. Ward is now instantly restored after 4 seconds. Okay. Added 5 tiers of a new suffix modifier that can roll on ward-based type items. All right. The Faith Guard unique helmet. I don't even know what that is. Maybe I'll look it up. Now has 40-60% faster restoration of ward. Okay. Existing versions of this item can be updated with a divine orb. Now the solution, I guess a lot of Ward's builds were using a flask, and I never made a Ward build. It seemed kind of too niche when it came out, and I believe it felt like it was kind of just being implemented because there was like another Path of Exile game that was getting kind of released at the same time that had a mechanic similar to Ward, and like, maybe GGG was like, hey, let's put that in our game too. I think that was the case if I remember properly. But, maybe there are some good Ward builds out there. I don't even know. And they're making it better. Okay, sure. Okay, so let's go on the next one. Problem. The Grasping Mail modifier that provides 100% increased global defenses provides too much value. Pretty much. I mean, I know that a lot of my guildies, you know, were trying to get Grasping Mail. That was kind of a big chase item with this affix. If you get like a Grasping Mail that didn't have this affix, it was, you know, basically worth nothing. I didn't want to try to use this in any of my builds because I felt basically this was an expensive chase item. And I don't, like, I really don't like going over 30 to 60x for an entire build total. And I don't even know, like, if you could get a nice Grasping Mail for that price. So it looks like they're nerfing Grasping Mail. Yeah, I think that makes sense. You know, you're able to make some pretty insane builds with a Grasping Mail. I'm just kind of quickly reading. Okay, it doesn't look like there's anything else about that. One of the things I would like them to do, and I don't see any note of this, is just maybe increase the chance of this affix rolling. So, I mean, Grasping Mails are still going to be good, but like it would, I'd like to see kind of more average players be able to get a Grasping Mail and craft one. When I say average, I mean like basically, you know, players that, you know, don't play super hardcore ridiculously. Like I'm on the ladder like every league that I play, but I wasn't able to get a Grasping Mail this league. All right, so let's go on to the next one. Problem. The Gravicus Veiled modifier on body armor that grants a percentage of your maximum life as energy shield adds a huge amount of survivability to many builds for the low investment of a single bench crafted modifier. That's true, especially if you're an Inquisitor and you're using Pious Path. I don't know if they're going to be nerfing Pious Path this league. You know, this is also very effective on an Inquisitor with Pious Path. Melding right here. So let's see what they're doing. All right, so it now grants a percentage of physical damage taken as fire and lightning damage. Well, that's still very powerful depending on how you build your character. I do kind of just see this as like an indirect or maybe direct nerf really to Inquisitors, mostly. I'd be interested to see what they do with Pious Path, if there's anything. Let's see, Pious. All right. I don't know if there's any changes for that. So where are we? All right. Crafting bench versions of the modifier provides this value. Existing items are unaffected by these changes. Okay, so I think that might be an okay change. I really like fun hybrid builds. And this affix basically lets you have a build that, you know, has life and energy shield. But I understand it was getting abused. So it makes sense why they're removing it. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Problem. Passive skills that grant blind effect do not adequately reward investment in them. We already actually covered this, and I actually have it unhidden here. So yeah, I think this is a good change. Will that cluster still see any action after the change? Probably not too much. It depends how easy it is to path over this direction. But let's go on the next one here. Problem. Mind over matter and builds that heavily invest in mana in general have been left in an underpowered state by various balance changes. Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I feel like basically with determination in its current state and grace in its current state, like the best thing to do is really just, you know, get a bunch of armor, you know, figure out like some way with energy shield, you know, an Aegis Aurora, things like that. There's a lot of things that overshadow mind over matter now. Okay, solution. As a first step, improve the base power of mind over matter. Okay, I always like it when they make stuff on the skill tree better. and make it less reliant on itemization. That's just me. I feel that, you know, lets you do more things. It adds more versatility to the game. So they're putting it to 40 instead of 30. And it looks like they're kind of removing the affix from items. Okay. Sure. I mean, what I've been doing really with Mind Over Matter, and I've used it for the Guardian build that I made, the Absolution Guardian build that I made, and I'm also using it for a Penance brand build that I'm working on as well. Let's see. But, you know, it's really, I'm using it in conjunction with Eldritch Battery, right? Mind Over Matter with Eldritch Battery, and then you're an Inquisitor, or you have Pious Path. And, you know, that's a way to basically use Mind Over Matter with just getting this. You know, it going to 40% over 30%, I think will make this combination better. And therefore kind of make Pious Path better, which was already really strong. So this is kind of, I think, a buff to my Absolution Guardian build, and you know, this Penance brand build that I'm working on as well. You just need to make sure that, you know, you can support it. You know, going Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery can put you in some really sticky situations, so you got to be careful. But if you can support it, I think this will increase kind of the power of this combo. You know, I think that also you know, if they're doing this, they might want to look at other ways to increase like mana regen and stuff like that. Well, let's go further down. Okay, so problem. Fortification is too difficult to gain for some melee builds and too frustrating to use for many others. Kind of, and I kind of have a story to tell for this league regarding fortification. What are they doing? Melee hits that can fortify now generate roughly twice as many fortification stacks. Okay, the base duration of fortification has been increased. The steadfast cluster has been buffed a little bit. So this actually goes. I actually tried. So basically, this Berserker that I'm playing, he's still pretty tanky, but he doesn't have fortification. And I wanted to fit fortification into the build, and I actually tried buying these points here to do it. Looks like they. But the issue wasn't. It was my max fortification level. It wasn't, you know, me hitting monsters to get fortification. You know, if you're using Cyclone or whatever, you're using a skill that hits pretty fast. Like I felt that, you know, you can get your fortification up pretty quickly. You know, maybe this will help, you know, fortify levels on slam builds. I don't, you know, or just builds that kind of attack slower and have, you know, less hits. But to me, the major issue is, you know, the maximum fortification level you get when you're not using the fortification support gem. I think it's 7 or something. You know, melee hits fortify with this mastery, -3 maximum fortification. I think it's 7. It felt really underwhelming for 4 points. And I unspec'd it as soon as I tested it out. So I wish they would have just changed like the maximum fortification, or at least also changed that as well. I think that would have probably been better, and you'll probably see this get more action if they would have done that, as opposed to just, you know, making it so when you do hit, you get more fortify stacks as opposed to increasing your maximum stacks. All right, let's go to the next one. Minion Balance. All right, let's see what they're doing here. The Path of Exile is a game about finding items to improve your character and other things. All right, let's just go to the problem here. There are limited options to invest in minion-related stats on player gear. meaning that their base stats have been inflated to compensate. This leads to most minion builds caring too little about itemization, and also limits the potential to scale high-end minion builds with better items. I know fancy hats can do a lot for a minion build, guys. So what's their general solution? Oh, that's a lot of changes there. Get some water first before I read through them. All right, lower the base life and damage, I guess, of minions, but provide more ways for players to invest into minions on their own gear, allowing minion damage and survivability to each be higher than previously possible for a character with strong items. So, you know, it seems like they're moving the game in a direction where, like, to get these good builds, it's harder to make a really strong build on a budget that isn't like a trapper, I guess. I kind of like that. I kind of like being able to figure out builds that are relatively cheap that can do 30 million damage and be pretty tanky. Like, that was still kind of possible. It seems like they're making it maybe slightly harder with this. But let's see the changes that they're making. The damage and life scaling values for minions have been adjusted. This affects all minions other than Raised Spectre, though the damage of Animate Guardian, Animate Weapon, Blink, Arrow, Mirror, blah, 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 blah. All right, let's go to the specific changes. Raised Spectre, the level of monster created by Raised Spectre has been lowered, though it remains unchanged. Monster at level 25 previously was 77. Okay, so this is kind of making your Raised Spectres slightly squishier. I rarely had issues. If you do a good minion build, like, rarely should your Spectres be dying. If you're using a Baronite Cleric, that thing seems to die no matter what you do. You can make it die less, but it's still going to die. Also, Baronite Clerics are rad, saying that. They just die. So that's a pet peeve of mine. All right, add a new ring. Bone ring. Bone ring. All right, so yeah, I do think that's a good change. Will it be better than an unset? I don't know. I really like unset rings. They add so much utility and strength to your character. You know, gem slots are rad. But yeah, minion elemental resistance is great. I think there needs to, like, I think people have been undervaluing minion elemental resistance. Like, if you compare minion elemental resistance on like a Ghastly Eye Jewel, the cost of that versus, like, you know, increased damage on a Ghastly Eye Jewel for minions, the increased percentage damage always goes for a premium, while you honestly will probably get more bang for the buck. You know, keeping your minions alive more, just it feeling like a smoother gameplay experience if you know, invested in minion elemental resistance. I really like trying to get that as close to capped as possible. It's good that they're doing that for a ring. Bone, Ivory, and Fossilized Spirit shields are now found with a minions deal increased damage implicit modifier. Previously spell damage. All right, that's cool. Can roll minion-related modifiers on shields. Okay, good. I want to see what the nerfs they're doing. I mean, they already talked a little bit about the nerfs. All right, and they're doing another change to shields as well. All right, and let's see. Added 2 new wand base types. I think this is good. You know, all we had was the Convoking Wand. It was like, it was a, you know, it's a wand you could only really get later in the game, I think. And, you know, having these 2 other wands will make it easier to get a minion wand, because, like, minion builds are really popular. So, you know, have more than one wand to support them. I'd like to also maybe they can consider other weapon types to support minions, like daggers and claws. I mean, I know there's like there's some uniques and stuff, but I'd like to. That's something they can maybe think about, so it doesn't always force you to use a wand. Gives you some more variety. I don't know if that'd be too strong though. Helmets can no longer roll. Okay, this might be a big one. Helmets can no longer roll the +1 to 3 to level of socketed minion gems. Instead, they now roll 1 to 2 of all minion skill gems. Okay. I kind of like that in some ways. The vendor recipe for helmet with the +1 to level of socket minion gems modifier has been replaced with a new recipe. Okay. I kind of like this because I like to I like always running a bunch of different skills on my builds, and you know, instead of just like having like my minions in my helmet, I like to kind of have minions everywhere, and this will make all those minions stronger. It is now possible to obtain +2 to the level of socketed minion gems as a corrupted implicit on helmets, body armor, gloves, and boots. I like this change, mainly because a lot of my builds I utilize unique items because they're cheaper than rare items for the most part. And like this will basically let you kind of corrupt a unique item to add some nice power to it. You know, corrupt a unique chest to make it stronger to support minions as opposed to always relying on a fancy hat. You know, having your main minion skill always in your hat, like it kind of forces you to build a certain way because like those hats are so powerful. Ghastly Eye Jewels have had their modifier pool updated. It doesn't really specify this. I hope that they think more about making the flat added damage to Ghastly Jewels like stronger. If you compare the flat added damage on most minions from a Ghastly Eye Jewel versus the percentage increased damage on a Ghastly Eye Jewel, the flat damage never stacks up. So let's see if they're doing anything to like added effective damage to skills, to a minion skills. And let's see if they buff the flat damage on the Ghastly Eye Jewels. So that would be interesting. Indomitable Army, notable passive, no longer provides the minions have 15% increased maximum life. That's the one that makes your guys like bleed immune, right? Where's it? It's like up here, right? Yeah. Okay, so like I never on my Absolution Guardian build, I didn't get this. It was kind of out of my pathing. I can understand why this is like a lot of necromancers would get something like this. When my like the few times where I have like my animated guardian die on me, it usually seems like I'm doing some like weird synthesis map with there's like some weird corpse explosion plus a bleed or something, and then my animated guardian just gets evaporated. But yeah, bleeds can be nasty. You know, if you're not running Pious Path and things like that. What is it? What do you need to get there? Yeah, I still think this is going to see action. You know, I don't know if it needed to be nerfed, but let's continue on. Maybe they thought, you know, with the increasing the power or like affixes that you can get from itemization, they thought they would, you know, take some power off the tree, and they're just taking some power off the tree. Okay, let's see. The small passive skills in Grave Intentions cluster now provide increased maximum life. Okay, so if you're running an actual guardian, and that'll let you get Pious Path from Inquisitor, and Grave Intentions is really great, and that's what I was doing on my my Guardian build. And the more life, you know, your minions have, the more energy shield they have as well, right? So, you know, I also saw, you know, there's the new rings, right, that give elemental resistance to minions. So maybe this is a good change. Maybe kind of buffs that cluster. I still didn't path in that direction. So I used an Impossible Escape I used a Anointment to grab Grave Intentions. But sure, make it. It seems like it's it's a minor change basically. Problem: some minion skills are clear outliers in terms of inherent power, possibly. So become the default choice for many minion-focused builds. All right, well, I'm getting some water. All right, Absolution. This is what I want to know. Sentinels of Absolution now deal approximately 25% less damage at gem level 1. So it's like a 5% damage nerfs. I'm assuming this like 5% is like, you know, level 30 or whatever too, right? So it's a 5% less damage nerf. Not a big deal. And they're increasing the radius, which I like. I actually I don't like to use concentrate effect on my absolution because it, you know, it reduces your radius, and absolution is a skill that can shotgun, right? And so when you're reducing your radius on a skill that can shotgun, in many cases you're doing less damage. Also, you know, definitely less clear. They're increasing the base critical chance. And they're increasing the affected added damage. So, you know, I was talking up here about, you know, if the Ghastly Eye Jewels, the pools are changed to increase the flat damage, this almost seems like a buff for Absolution. Cool. So this is a slight buff in my opinion. At the very least, like, it'll make it so Ghastly Eye Jewels that just have, you know, flat added damage can compete better as itemization choices with Ghastly Eye Jewels that have increased percentage damage for minions. So I think this is, and it also kind of expands the supports that you can use with Absolution. I think this is a buff for Absolution, guys. Animate Guardian. Minions attacks now deal... They increase the damage for Animated Guardian. That's cool. So one of the ways that you keep your Animated Guardian alive is it leeches stuff. And, you know, it'll be nice that this will help your Animate Guardian basically leech just a bit more if you have, you know, life leech on it. So that's good. Also, you know, depending on the other changes that they make, like, you know, I'd like to be able to make it an Animate Guardian build that just hits really hard if that's possible, like Theorycraft one. So this helps a little in that too. And yeah, that's interesting. Okay. It lets you do more stuff with your Animated Guardian. That's kind of cool. Animate Weapon now costs 4 mana at gem level unchanged, up to 16 at... All right, so they increased the mana cost of Animated Weapon. I don't know if that was necessary. All right, let's see what they're doing with Arakali's Fang. So I have this Berserker build that actually uses an Arakali's Fang, but doesn't use it for the spiders. It uses it to actually do damage, because if you have 20 spiders out, like, it does a lot of poison damage. You know, it's a pretty good weapon for, you know, 35C or something. Okay, it stacks up 2 daggers that are many more exalts that are rare. All right, so Viper Strike skill used by raised spiders now has a base poison duration of 4 seconds. Okay, so they're nerfing the spider here, and no longer has 25% of physical damage as extra chaos. Wow, that's a big nerf for spiders. Player now gains 15% increased poison damage per spider instead of 12. This actually buffs my build. And, like, also, I'm guessing Arakali's Fangs are, like, pretty cheap at League Start. Expensive at League Start. But, like, in late League, you know, they're like 25, 35C or something, right? I think as a result, I think these are going to be cheaper to buy. I think this change is going to make them cheaper to buy. And it makes it, like, you know, people can consider using this weapon as a weapon to do damage, not just for the spiders. So, I don't know. It doesn't hurt me, but I understand that it feels like it's a pretty big nerf to the spider builds. All right, so Herald of Agony. I think this could use a slight buff. I'm running a Herald of Agony on my Berserker build that I'm running right now. I'm really just using it for kind of like the poison damage, but so they're increasing the attack speed, and this could, like, this is just a small, you know, 1%, but yeah, that's times 40, right? So that's pretty significant. Okay, cool. Herald of Purity, I think this actually could use a significant buff. Sentinels of Purity now deal approximately 15% more damage. Okay, nice. Okay, so it's just an overall buff. Yeah, I think that's great. You know, I'm a big fan of Templars. And I really liked playing a Guardian. It was a fun experience. And I really wanted to try to make a Guardian build that was really competitive. You know, that could do 20 million, 30 million damage. On the cheap with Sentinels of Purity, because it's very thematic for the Guardian. But I just couldn't get the damage there. It just wasn't, I couldn't theory craft it properly. So it looks like it'll be easier to, you know, make a Sentinel of Purity build that does more damage now, which is cool. Summon Phantasm support. I actually really like this support. They're buffing it. Yeah, it looks like they're buffing it. Okay, cool. I think that there's actually a bunch of supports that I'd like to see them buff just slightly more. You know, most people still use kind of the same supports. They might have changed after the gem nerfs, but it's still kind of like in this same, you know, 5 or 6 supports you really see. And I like how they're buffing this. That's nice. And also, you can make really good starter builds on a Soul Rust. I've done that before. It's just it's a fun item to use. Phantasms are cool. So nice. Okay, so Raise Zombie. Let's see what they're doing here. Gem quality no longer grants increased movement speed. What does it grant instead? I'm not sure. And it looks like it's cheaper to cast as well. Okay. Summon Carrion Golem. So it looks like they're just kind of changing how life is applied, but it seems like it's the same. So it doesn't look like they're making a change to Carrion Golem. Or it's like really minor. Chaos Golem. I kind of think this could use a little bit of buff, but I've never made a Golem answer before. So they're doing the same life thing, basically, but it doesn't seem like that's a real change. Okay, and they're just straight up buffing it. That's nice. Oh, that's a cool buff right there. Basically, it couldn't crit before, now it can crit. Okay, yeah, I think that needed a buff. I'm glad they buffed it. Flame Golem. I've played around with this in different builds. It's never been my favorite Golem. I have a tendency to really like the Ice Golem and Lightning Golem. Let's see. It's added. Oh, they're doubling its damage effectiveness. It'd be interesting to see like Golemancer builds. I'd like to see where those go. It really seems that they're doing some decent buffs to golems. Ice Golem. So does the life thing, that's not making much of a difference, right, with this spear. So this is kind of like a somewhat minor buff, it seems, to the Ice Golem compared to like the Flame Golem. Well, they did reduce its critical strike chance though. So I don't know. I still think this feels like a buff. Summon Lightning Golem. Same thing with the life. They're just kind of changing the calculus of that, but it seems like it's the same. They're giving it slightly more crit base. Oh. The basic lightning projectile spell. I want to know like how often it casts this. I should probably know this. If it's often, this is a pretty big buff. If it's like on a cooldown and only, it casts this spell infrequently, then I don't know how much of a buff this is. Stone Golem, like everyone uses this. I mean, I've never been that much of a fan. I get why people use it. All right, looks like it's no changes. It's just the life thing, which doesn't really seem to change much. All right, Summon Holy Relic. The Relic's Nova spell now has 250% effectiveness of added damage. Whoa. Yeah, I think that's a pretty cool buff. And now grants more life regenerated per second. I forgot like how much that is, but it's like 50% of what it's already doing, right? So 50% more. This seems awesome. I think that I think this is going to see some more play, and maybe you can make a really cool like Holy Relic build. I think like with this 250 effectiveness of added damage, and you're using that like Geoffrey's hat or whatever, it gives you like 2 of these guys. Like this you might be able to do some serious stuff with this now. Raging Spirit. I always thought this was like due to the mechanics of this skill. I always thought it was in a good place. Are they buffing it? Okay, they did make it cost a little bit more mana, but you know they buffed it up too. Okay, so they're just basically buffing Raging Spirit, and Raging Spirit is one of those skills that, due to its mechanics, is in a strong place, and they're just making it slightly more strong, in my opinion at least. Summon Reaper. I haven't made a Reaper build. And I'm not that experienced on the Reaper skill, but let's see what they're doing. So they're nerfing Reaper. Okay, I guess there are some really strong Reaper builds this league. All right, summon skeletons. All right, let's see what they're doing to summon skeletons. No longer has minions gain 50% more added damage. Skelly mages now deal approximately 5% less damage at Jumble. All right, scaling 25. Basically, they're doing 25% less damage. Okay, so they're taking a nerf bat to Skellies. Here's the thing. Like, I know that, you know, Skelly Necros, they were very, very popular, and it's a good, solid build. It really is. I think that, like, if you build absolute, like, in 3.18, I think that you could make an Absolution build just as strong as a Skelly Necro build. So, for example, my build that I had, it was cheaper than Skelly Necro, and it did as much damage. And so, but they buffed Absolution, and they took a huge nerf bat to summon Skellies, it seems. All right, we're going to see more Absolution builds, at least. We're probably still going to see, like, Vol summon skeletons, though, in builds, like, obviously. There's just a lot of bodies to throw at monsters, especially if they taunt. Verona's March fixed a bug where summon Arbalest. I don't know much about this, so the whole bug fix, right? It was too strong, so we fixed a bug, and now it's not as strong. Or actually, maybe this is the opposite. Whatever. Okay. So let's go to the next one. Problem. Because minions are monsters, they inherit some stats from monsters that can significantly affect build choices and power. Maybe I should move this up. As these stats are not detailed anywhere in game, they can cause, a bunch of confusion. Yeah, minion builds are very confusing for new players. Like Animate Guardian, all that stuff. Like they already have enough to deal with. All right, so let's see what the changes that they're making are. Minions no longer have hidden penalties to bleeding, ignite, and poison damage. Ooh, I feel that you might make a really strong poison build with minions then, because you can get a lot of minions out there. It's a lot of poison stacks. Summon Reaper no longer has a hidden bonus to bleeding damage. Okay, as a result, minions now deal approximately twice as much poison damage, 3.5 times much ignite damage, and 7 times as much bleeding damage. All right, this is what I want to see. We're seeing Animate Guardian hit like a freaking truck and bleed stuff. That's what I want to see right there. I don't know, that's an option. Okay. Minions now gain the same bonuses from Endurance, Frenzy, and Power Charges as players do. Okay. So, you know, they're buffing a bunch of like base crit, right? But now they're nerfing Power Charges. I thought it was really weird that, you know, like it's 200% increased chance to crit or something for Power Charges for minions, and it's completely different. Like this makes sense from a mechanical standpoint. Hopefully the other changes that they're making will counteract this. I'm guessing they will. All right, so let's see what they're adding to let you get more crit. Spirit Offering. You know, I was talking about poison. Okay, so it no longer does poison damage. So it no longer does chaos, but it increases critical strike chance. Okay, this is basically a buff for the builds that I have. So that's a buff. But they're also nerfing crit too. So, but this helps my Absolution Guardian build and helps my Penance Brand build that I have planned as well. That's right, I have a hybrid Penance Brand minion build. The Fearsome Force passive skill tree cluster no longer grants minion area of effect. Okay, cool. I like that. You know, I've been playing Absolution in the last 2 leagues or so, and I know there's people that recommend getting these. I tried these out. It didn't feel very impactful, so I didn't bother speccing these 3 points here. I really wanted this to also increase the size of my Baronite Cleric aura, that circle around the Baronite Cleric. It didn't. It was a really big letdown. So they're just changing this to crit. As a result of that, you know, when people do heat map, you're going to see these very, very red this coming league. I think these is red AF right here. Okay, so the Fearsome Force. Okay, the minions have increased 100% increased critical strike chance for the minion offense mastery has been replaced with minions have. Okay, so I don't know. I really hope that this this cluster here gives you a lot of crit then, because they're taking 100. They're just taking this away from you. So this Fearsome Force passive skill tree cluster better be fearsome with its crit. The new minion modifiers mentioned above include a family of minion critical strike chance modifiers available on wands. Okay, good. I wonder what those levels are going to be. All right, let's keep on going. And shields too. Good. All right, problem. The Necromancer's unnatural strength notable passive skill is extremely strong for almost all minion builds due to how well minion skills scale with gem level. True. The strongest thing about Necromancers, though, is really their self-offerings. But oh no, they're taking the +2 away from Necromancers. Now grants Unholy Might. Well, this still might see use because, like I was talking about, like poison damage, right? So you could make a poison minion build with that. And it doesn't seem like they're nerfing the self offerings on Necromancer. So, yeah, you don't get the lovely quality of life, the +2 easy mode compared to a Guardian anymore. But you know, Unholy Might, like you can do some interesting stuff with poison damage in that. So, all right, let's go to the next thing. Miscellaneous skill and support gem balance. Okay, do I want to read all of this? Okay, so they're kind of nerfing corpse explosions, kind of. So they're taking like the supplemental ways that you can increase the life of corpses away, or they're reducing that, they're nerfing that. And it looks like they're increasing the innate strength of these skills. Is this doing it for the Vol one too? All right, looks like they're nerfing the Vol one, but this, I don't think this is going to be that big of a deal. I think it might be like, just doing the quick math in my head, I'm just going to spitball here. Let's say this is like 10% less damage. 5 to 10. Let's just say 10% less damage with these changes. That's what I'm thinking. I still think it can be viable just based off of the mechanics of Corpse Explosion. You know, will it still be, you know, a very high tier racing build? Maybe. As high? No. Let's keep on going. Problem: when fire traps hit, damage was buffed in 3.17. The damage over time of its burning ground was also unintentionally buffed. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, righteous fire builds. Your way to kill a boss has been nerfed. Let's see. Fire trap now deals 32 base fire damage per second. So they've increased this. Oh. Okay. So this is kind of a nerf. This is a significant nerf to fire trap. Yeah, I mean, I think that I understand the appeal of Righteous Fire builds. I think, um, but the damage on them just never really impressed me that much. And it felt kind of like a trap build in some ways if you're, wanting to use it to kill bosses. I mean, I can understand it's a real chill build. And it has a cool aesthetic to it. Like it could be a cool way to play the game with like a controller and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like there might be some less Righteous Fire builds this league, especially if they nerf Pious Path. Let's see. But I did do a check for Pious Path, and I didn't see a note here, so they might not be nerfing it. All right, so problem. Cooldown-based traps are balanced around being mostly a single target damage supplement with potential to use them more frequently for builds heavily invested in doing so. Okay, so they're reducing the cooldowns, so you can cast these less. Okay, so that's like a 30% reduction going away. And let's see, reconstruct notable passive has been removed to over repaired and no longer grants. Okay, so that's like 60%. Flamethrower trap. Looks like they're kind of buffing up the damage of this to compensate. They're doing the same, and they're doing the same thing for Lightning Spire. These two are getting buffed, at least in terms of their damage, but you're not going to be able to use them as much, and people I think really care about using them. I actually think, is this going to reduce the power level of trap builds? To some extent, I honestly think that one of the strongest trap skills mechanically is explosive trap. Any skill that does basically base physical damage and can shotgun and does a lot of hits, like those, you can always usually scale those very well, and especially if you can convert the fizz to elemental. There's a lot of things that you can do with those. So, I think you can still make like an explosive trap build. Not a lot of people made them, but yeah, that's traps. If they're not nerfing explosive trap, like you still have a trap skill that if you build it right can destroy things. So trappers are still trappers. Okay, so let's go. Problem: explosive arrow currently has a single stat for hit and elemental damage per arrow stuck in the target. But this makes it impossible to reduce the damage of overpowering ignite builds without also affecting the underperforming hit-based builds. I'm actually a fan of hit-based builds. I like big chunky hits that you can convert to cold and lightning damage because I like to freeze and shock targets. I like that. I like the big chunky upfront damage. I've been playing a poison build, this Berserker, and it's, poison-based damage. I don't like the feel of it. I prefer my big, giant, chunky, freezing, shocking hits. That's what I like. But I know that explosive arrow was meta. I think it was, in my opinion, it was a little overrated, honestly. But, obviously it was strong. And it looks like they're nerfing it. I don't know if that was necessary. I guess like a slight nerf made sense. So they're nerfing it. All right, let's go to the next thing. Problem: when spell-based damage values are dramatically increased in 3.17 and methods of triggering spells had their power reduced in compensation. Okay, so they're reducing cast when damage taken. I'm guessing they're nerfing cast when damage taken, I'm guessing, right? Yeah, so this is like a ward loop nerf probably. Just, those... I don't like playing builds where there's just a bunch of screen vomit. Like, you can't tell what's going on. Some people like that. Some people love those builds where it just, like, crashes them to the desktop and kills the server instance. But those builds just aren't my jam. They're painful for me to play. But, you know, I like that this game is a game where you can do crazy, weird stuff like that. And that appeals to certain people. You know, I use cast when damage taken on like all of my builds. But I use it differently than most people. Generally, what I like using it for, and I think I'm using on this build too, is just for Purifying Flame. You know, like cast when damage taken, you know, you take less than 600 damage, right? And you spit out a Purifying Flame, and this Purifying Flame makes the monsters take 15 or 5% increased damage taken, which is pretty significant actually. Well, maybe not as much, but you know, it can be significant for the investment. And then of course you got Consecrated Ground, and Consecrated Ground is just bomb. I love Consecrated Ground. You know, you get way more life regen, curse reduction. It's lovely. So I'm a Consecrated Ground fan. I want it like covering the entire screen. That's my opinion on Consecrated Ground. So let's see, what's the next thing that they're doing? The anomalous alternative quality of cast on death support makes it too easy to guarantee critical strike. Okay, yeah, there is some crazy like cast on death builds, or maybe just like one this league. They use a bunch of like rarity find flasks, and they die and then they kill the boss. So yeah, it looks like they're kind of nerfing that. Okay, sure, that was a little. I mean, it was cool in a way, but it was a little too gimmicky and let you do really powerful stuff. All right, problem. Divine Blessing support is intended to allow characters who do not wish to reserve much of their mana to still use an aura by casting the aura for a normal mana cost every few seconds. True. All right, the cost. So what are they doing to Divine Blessing? Because I use Divine Blessing on 2 of my builds. All right, so it can't be supported by life tap. I think that's very good. And skills supported by Divine Blessing now have... All right, so they're increasing the effectiveness of it, and they're increasing the area of effect. But they're not... But you can still use it with Eldritch Battery. So this is a buff to my builds. So basically... Like, life tap is kind of like a free way to use Divine Blessing, right? Especially if you have good defensive layers, and you can get that, you know, 3,000 life back really quickly in most circumstances. There's lots of ways to get your life back quick. So I understand why they did that. If you have Eldritch Battery, you're still basically using your energy shield to cast Divine Blessing, and then it just usually recharges really, really quickly, right? So yeah, this is a buff to my builds, which is cool. And I still like it that, you know, if you do have Eldritch Battery, this is kind of a way to get some more power out of that, because there are downsides to Eldritch Battery as well. All right, so let's see here. Problem: Sniper's Mark provides a large amount of power to projectile builds, but also provides powerful flash charge generation. True. I've always been a fan of like Assassin's Mark though. I already feel that there's enough stuff on the tree and itemization where you can basically almost have your flask up all the time without being a Pathfinder. But I guess this made it much easier to even do that. So, and it says, you may see these stats appear again in the future. So this, like, if enough people complain, they might just revert it. I don't... Yeah, we're obviously going to see less Sniper's Marks and probably more Assassin's Marks. All right, so let's go to the next one. Problem: Hydrosphere was previously commonly used to provide an extra target to hit, allowing many skills to benefit from extra damage, splashing, projectile chains, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, cooldown was added. Okay, that nerfed a little bit. I liked one of the little tricks with Hydrosphere and Absolution is, you know, your minions were blasting away at it. It was kind of cool. Looks like that. So this is a slight nerf for my Absolution build, but really I was mostly using Hydrosphere for the resistance reduction, the cold and lightning resistance reduction that it applies. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Due to Path of Exile's constant evolution, there are sometimes skill and support gems that are left feeling underwhelming to use. Solution, carry out a routine balance pass on a selection of underperforming skill and support gems. All right, let's see what they're buffing. All right, this is a lot of gems. I don't want to read this all, at least out loud. I'm already getting a little parched here, and I value my voice. I respect all of the real Path of Exile content creators that have the fortitude to read all of these manifestos and patch notes. You guys are the bee's knees. I'm not one of you. All right. So, Artillery Ballista, Blazing Salvo, Cleave, Crackling Lance, Decoy Totem. Ooh, I like this. I've always been a fan of using the Decoy Totem, especially in the campaign. It was always very effective. With this increase buff to its life, I'd like to see if maybe there's a place for it in kind of, near the end game or higher end maps. Devouring Totem. I never use the Devouring Totem. Energy Blade. This is a cool skill. It looks like they're buffing a little bit, which is nice. Actually, more than a little bit. I don't know if that's enough. Okay. Let's see. Haste. Yeah, I think Haste needs a buff. Breathe. Yeah. I don't know if that's enough of a buff. It's a lot of that's a lot of effectiveness of added damage though, man. 350. All right, so Rejuvenation Totem. Huh. So, well, they made it less important for you to get the Divergent Rejuvenation Totem. I kind of like this. I know I'm not talking much. I'm just reading these silently. Yeah, I'm just breezing over all of these from this point. And it looks like all of these skills are getting buffed. Critical Strike Affliction Support. Ooh. I'm going to fit this into... I think I'm going to fit this into my Berserker build. Yeah, so this is a buff for one of my builds. That's cool. All right, so let's go to the next thing. Miscellaneous Ascendancy Balance. All right, are they nerfing Inquisitor? Are they nerfing Pious Path? Please, please no. I love Pious Path. All right, the Trickster Ascendancy class has caused multiple balance issues over the years, but changes to the class have increasingly left it lacking a compelling identity or sufficient power. I actually think Trickster is a kind of a strong class. You can do some fun stuff with its added chaos damage. There's some fun math you can pull with that, and I also feel that it had some strong mechanisms to regenerate mana, and use with movement skills that I didn't really see a lot of builds leveraging that much. That I think hopefully they still give it some of those kind of same gimmicks. I wanted to make a Trickster build at some point leveraging those gimmicks, but we'll see what they're doing with it. It doesn't look like they're really giving the details right now. Juggernaut. The Juggernaut's unbreakable skill is overly complicated. Is it? Let's see. This doesn't seem like an overly complicated skill. This is just adding a bunch of stuff. In my opinion, this is the strongest aspect of this ascendancy right here. So let's see. So they're taking all this away and they're doing this instead. And now adds 8% of armor applies to elemental damage from hits. I like this. I don't know if this is going to piss Juggernaut people off, but there's some fun theory crafting stuff that you can do when you apply a percentage of your armor to affect the game. Because you can scale your armor really high, especially as a Juggernaut. And that's... Yeah, I like this. I think this is cool. All right, the next one. Added a new notable Ascendancy passive skill to Juggernaut. Untiring. It grants 40% increased life regeneration. Oh, and does this. It does the thing that I said was the strongest aspect I felt from a theory crafting perspective from Juggernaut. And it looks like it makes it better. So the 40% increased life regeneration on this is like, what, 2.2 or something? So instead of like, you can kind of just read that, but this also increases other things as well. I do like the increased life regeneration rate, just like 40% like that, because that, most of the passives that you get on the tree are like, 2% of life per second, right? So this compounds on top of this. Like, this is cool. I like this change. I know that it's more like ascendancy tax, if you will, for a Juggernaut. Yeah, I don't know. I would give this a try. Like I think that's kind of cool. All right, so problem, Chieftain's Tahoa. Oh, did I say it right? I think I did. Tahoa Forest Strength skill doesn't provide enough damage to be attractive to slam-based builds, especially when it has to compensate for not being exertable and not synergizing with the Fist of War support. True. Slams by Tahoa's Chosen now deal... Okay, that's nice. All right, Pathfinder's Master Alchemist skill is still quite weak. All right, added more power to Master Alchemist. Okay, nice. Reducing the power of nature's boon. Pathfinders to me are kind of in a weird state in that they can be very powerful still. But there are so many different things in the game, even after those flask nerfs, that really make it possible to have flasks on basically all the time. And, because you can do that, I think it pushes people away from playing Pathfinder. Because you can kind of like make a half-assed Pathfinder doing other things. So yeah, this is... I like this change right here because, you can get this affix from a magic flask itself, right? And so let's say you get this affix on a magic flask, and that's so it's like this increases it by 20%, right? This is a good change. I think this is a good change right here. And then that's like, so you have like 25% chance to freeze Shocking Knight during any flask effect if you had a flask with that affix. Okay, cool. Is this enough for Pathfinders? Probably, because again, flask are really strong. You can make some strong Pathfinder builds. All right, unique item balance. Problem, Omniscience and Ashes of Stars are powerful. Yes, they are. But they're really rare and hard to get now, and you need to be... Of course, a lot of people got them, but yeah, they're really expensive, and I think there's a lot of kind of players that don't make a lot of money in this game. I liked it. I liked it the prior league where they were more common to get. I think they were a little too powerful though for how common they were to get. See what the solution is. Lower the amount of elemental penetration and resistance is granted by Omniscience. The aim is still being powerful, but not the ideal choice for a large variety of builds. So what is this? This is like a 30%. Okay. What I'd like them to do is if they do this change, like this state of the item is, I think, in a good place. As long as they increase the drop rate and make it easier to get. That's my hot take. I don't know if that's a fair take or not. I just, I like using unique items in builds, like I said. At least most, I like unique items that aren't chase items, that can kind of stack up to the power of a really nice rare item because it lets you basically build budget builds. And I felt, the first iteration of Omniscience and Ashes was like that, but they were too powerful. So this is perfect, but they really need to make a drop more, in my opinion. All right, so Melding of the Flesh is a unique jewel that transfers, yes, Melding the Flesh. So they're nerfing Melding, and what they're doing is they're also making it so it reduces your maximum elemental resistance as well, versus on top of the the negative, what, 60 or 70 it had, or on it. So what I see this doing is, yes, melding isn't as strong anymore. But what this does to me is it makes it even more exclusive for the people with builds that cost a lot of money. I like it when they make changes to let people that don't have as much money compete. And so, like, you're going to see melding the flush, but I think that you're really only going to see on super high-end builds now. That's my hot take. I don't know if that's the case, but it feels like they're making it so to properly power a melding of the flesh, you need to be a real 1%er. And I'd rather them just decrease its power level and make it easier to fit in more builds. That's what I would have liked to see. Because I didn't have enough money this league to make a build with melding of the flesh. Okay, so miscellaneous character and item balance. Okay, so they're nerfing Brittle. Yes, they should nerf Brittle. Brittle was ridiculous. Okay, so it's 6% instead of 50. Yeah, 15% is like ridiculously high. I mean, I could understand like it being 10 at max, but like 15 was pretty crazy. Brittle ground was the real problem though. So now it has a default of 2% versus 5%. Okay, yeah. I think I read that somewhere, so I've added it somewhere, I think. So let's see. Yeah, it's right here. So let's see, brittle ground, right? That's like nuts. And on this build, I'm just getting brittle ground from boots, right? As in a fix on my boots. So we're doing this and we're doing this. So it's not too much, an 82% chance. Let's see what happens if I switch my Fang to a Beanols. Well, you got 100% there. And you're still critting like crazy. I like that. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a fair change to make to Brittle. Especially bringing 5 down to 2. That's much better. Yeah, this is a good change. Of course, this will nerf. This won't nerf my Absolution Guardian build. This is nerfing this Berserker build that I have, and it may be, and it's also nerfing the Penance Brand build that I have slightly as well. But this is a nerf that needed to happen. Let me get some water. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Problem. The introduction of reservation efficiency has encouraged a much larger range of builds to invest in reservation skills to a smaller, moderate degree. True, I think that's a good thing. This is not a problem itself. I think it's a good thing. But what are they doing? They're taking this away. They're taking... Okay, so 1, this was overpowered. 2, I found it very useful for budget builders like myself, and to build fun builds with auras without being 1%ers that can afford voices and those expensive cluster jewels. So, all right, and they're nerfing this, which is fine, and they're nerfing this, which is fine, okay? But they're straight up removing this. And it doesn't sound like they're adding more clusters on the tree. Mana reservation. Yeah, it's just like right here, 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 and over here, right? So, you know, if you look at the heat maps for where people are investing points, like these are all lit up super red. This is less so, right? But these are always, you know, if they're pathing this direction, usually they're lit up super red. And I think what they should have done is, yeah, remove this 15% increased mana reservation efficiency of skills. Take that away. It was too powerful. But please, like, add some more freaking clusters of mana reservation on the skill tree. You know, let it, you know, instead of just like one up here, put like another one in this, you know, that like you can easily grab, you know, that isn't too far away. That's what I'd like to see them do. This way, like, you can, you know, still run auras, run a decent amount of auras on cheap builds, as long as, you know, you spend some points in your skill tree. I would like to see them do that. I wish they, you know, although that nerf was necessary, well, not necessary, but all that nerf was justified because it really was, it was an outlier in terms of its power. All this is really doing is just like hurting people that aren't the 1%, in my opinion. That's what this is doing. And maybe that's the intention. I don't know. All right, but this is the biggest nerf for my builds. And I'm going to have to rejigger my builds because of this. All right, next thing. Everything else has mostly been a buff, mostly for my builds. Like the Brittle ground, that was nerfed. Obviously, that's a nerf, but it's that, you know, I understand that. I'm not butt puckered about this. All right, let's go to the next thing. Problem. The line of flask modifiers that grant flash charges when you are hit by an enemy make it too easy to keep your flask active permanently for most non-boss content, and you know, even boss content in some ways. Yeah, if you get like a life flask where you gain like 7 charges on hit, like that, you're always going to be able to use that life flask. It was overpowered, and obviously that affix went for a premium, and it was super meta, so they're nerfing that affix. Okay. That's fair. It's going from 3. I think this could be 4, but I think this should just be a percentage of, you know, of the cost of using it once, as opposed to 1, 2, and 3. But sure, this needs to be nerfed. I don't know if this is the best way to nerf it. Okay, problem. The veiled and crafted modifiers that cause skills to cost no mana or life while focused undermine the importance of the skill cost and constrain design space. All right, what are they doing? Well, let's see. Solution. Non-aura skills cost no mana or life while focused. Yeah, you can do some fun stuff with focus. I don't know what builds were exploiting this off the top of my head. Maybe there were some overpowered builds that were exploiting this. And they're right that this is like a very, like, this is a pretty, depending on how you build your character, that this could be a pretty nutty thing to do. Like, I'm a fan of leveraging focus skills. Like, so for example, with this build that I'm working on, like, I'm using a Diadem, and it's really for that 176 increased duration of elements you inflict while focused. Like, that's crazy. That's a crazy focus affix right there. It doesn't look like they're nerfing that one, but okay, sure. The timeless dual exclusive Chainbreaker Keystone is too difficult to properly use, while also limiting the potential to provide. Or what are they doing? What are they doing to Chainbreakers? I actually wanted to make. I had a cool Divergent Berserk build planned. Okay, so Chainbreaker has been reworked. It now grants 1 rage generation for 25 mana regen per second. I like that. Mana recovery from regeneration. Oh, mana recovery. All right, so like, I think this is probably, like, people know about this, but what is it? Katava's Teachings. Yeah, this thing. This is a really cool cluster jewel. When it was first released, people didn't think much of it. It was like going for like 1 chaos. I think it was the Delirium League, right, when Cluster Jewels were released. But I've incorporated this on several builds since then, and I used it the league it came out. I'm like, wow, this is super powerful, and it really is. And this is a way to basically, you know, let you power a Divergent Berserk build with Chainbreaker. But they're taking that away with the Recover. Now, keep in mind that this is Recover, so like if you do a no regen map, you still get the life and mana from this. So this is still awesome, but it doesn't. But now it's scaling with mana regen. So this is pretty cool. Like maybe like a Hierophant Chainbreaker, or like, I know I was talking about Tricksters and how they have really great ways to regenerate mana. Hopefully they retain that. You can make like a Chainbreaker Trickster build. That'd be cool. All right, next thing. Problem. damage taken recouped as life is a relatively new recovery option. I think it's a cool one, and I think there's some really already there's some powerful theory crafting options with it. I don't think people have really maximized it yet. Like, I've seen it very powerful on builds that have 700 exalts invested, but you can make it powerful cheaper, in my opinion. So what are they doing? They're just making it easier for you to get. So yeah, I think this is a very powerful mechanic. If you stack the hell out of it, combined with other sources to multiply it, like you can or leverage it. Yeah, it's this. I'd like to see more people build this next league. Maybe I'll come up with a build for this. I don't know. That's it. I'm done. Okay. Well, thank you GGG for putting the loving effort into making this giant wall of text. I also want to thank all of the real content creators, again, for having the fortitude to read these things in reaction videos. This is a lot of work. You guys are awesome, and I should be releasing a new build video hopefully in the next couple of days. All right, bye.